Minister Shane Ross is expected to receive some backlash when he brings his plans for graduated speed penalties to Cabinet. The laws would see penalty points and fines applied based on how far above the speed limit a motorist is caught travelling. However, some pretty guilty deeds have called the proposals an attack on rural Ireland. Well, joining us with more on that story and everything else this morning is Ellen Gunning, Director of the Irish Academy of Public Relations. Good morning to you, Ellen. You might just bring us through those proposals in a bit more detail. What exactly is Shane Ross thinking here?
He's trying to ensure that the faster you travel, the more over the speed limit you are, the more money you're fined. And he's trying to automate it to a certain extent. So what he's saying is if you're 10 kilometres over the speed limit, you get an automatic 2 penalty points and a €60 fine. And that graduates up to 30 kilometres over. And at 30 kilometres over, it's up to 2,000 of a fine. I can't remember how many penalty points. But the whole idea is the faster you travel, the more you pay. I'm fascinated by the fact that this is an anti-rural. It's getting a backlash as anti-rural. I don't see speed as either a city or a rural issue. Speed is speed. But I think it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I think it's the daftest piece of proposal that I've ever come across. 10 kilometres over the speed limit is 5 miles. So if you're in a 20-mile-an-hour zone and you're doing 22 miles an hour, are you really a danger to anybody, or are you trying to keep within the speed limit? I think there needs to be, I think really if they're serious about it, and I get I'm not a fan of speeding, so I get what they're trying to do, but I think they need to say, look, if there's a margin of error in electoral polls, there should be a margin of error for motorists. So give them 5 miles either side, that you're 5 miles under or 5 miles over. You're doing your best, you're trying to keep within the speed limit. I think that's sensible. But above and beyond that then, I think they need to bring in much more rules about it.
Well, I mean, over 30 kilometres above what the speed limit is, a court appearance, and there's 4 penalty points and a fine of up to 2,000, you would see pretty tough sanctions, I would have thought.
Very tough, very tough. And I think the problem is that, again, it's back to this is the sanction, nothing else. So there's no allowance for whether you're on a side road, whether you're in a city, whether you're on a motorway. There's no allowance for whether or not this is at 4 o'clock in the morning, when you're coming to an area that might be deemed to be a zone where they're working, they're doing roadworks, but nobody does roadworks at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I really think I can see where he's trying to go, but I think it's daft as a brush. I think it's a populist idea.
What has Shane Ross actually said, and what support does he have within government circles?
Very little, it seems. The Taoiseach seems to be pretty much supporting it. Pascal O'Donoghue seems to be pretty much a fan as well. All of the rural TDs, Michael Ring, Heather Humphreys, all of those TDs are lining up against it. I don't understand why, because I don't think it's a rural city, but I do think it's a crazy kind of thing. I think the problem with Shane Ross is he keeps trying to bring in populist measures. He's a populist politician, so he keeps trying to do things that people will say, what a good idea. We're all against speeding, and he's saying the Road Safety Authority are in agreement with him, which of course they would be. And you'd want to be crazy to actually approve of people breaking speed limits that are reasonable speed limits. But I think to actually apply this broad brushstroke.
But surely there's something to be said for penalising somebody who is 8 kilometres over the speed limit in a different way to penalise somebody who is 40 kilometres over the speed limit.
Absolutely, but if you're 8 kilometres over the speed limit, is it really all that serious? Is it a 2 penalty points and a €60 fine? I think it should be a certain margin of error that perhaps if a guard stops you and says, listen, you're always cruising at just under the 10 kilometres or whatever.
Guarded discretion, we know how dangerous that can be. I mean, Shane Ross would say, you must look at this with the backdrop of the figures of the number of deaths on our road, which unfortunately we're looking at almost a 10% increase year on year on the number of fatalities on Irish roads, and so anything that's going to reduce that figure is to be welcomed. That's his argument.
I know, but it needs to be more nuanced. I think the broad argument is good, but I think really it's not about let's just pick a figure and put a number of penalty points and a fee against it. I think it needs to be much more carefully considered.
Right, I'd be interested to hear what people at home think of that. Now, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday launched his Conservative Party's manifesto for next month's election. Take a look.
I think the biggest issue at this election is really whether people have any confidence in politics anymore. And I think the reason that confidence and trust in politics has been so undermined is because for 3.5 years they've seen politicians engaged in constant prevarication, procrastination, dither and delay when the people of this country voted to get Brexit done. And we are the only party. only party. We're the only party at this election that has a prospectus to do that. We've got a deal that I say is ready to go. Let's get on and do it. And that, I think, is the way to bring our country together and to enable us all to focus on the priorities that we care about, particularly the NHS.
So that's Boris Johnson speaking there yesterday at the manifesto's launch. I mean, we saw him in the debate last week, and some of the commentary off the back said he is trying to be taken more seriously. He is trying to appear more statesman-like. What did you make of A, the manifesto, and B, his delivery of the manifesto yesterday?
Manifesto was fantastic. I love his idea of a manifesto, right? He has simplified everything down. This man is writing the book on, get Brexit done, build that wall. There are a lot of similarities between the way he approaches politics and the way Donald Trump approaches politics in terms of communications. Look at the manifesto. It has a big picture of him on the front cover. You know exactly who you're voting for as Prime Minister. Manifestos don't do that. They look like boring, stock exchange, you should invest in this business things. Normally they're very thick documents that journalists and business people and economists read, and the rest of us couldn't be bothered. We get the headlines. He's produced a booklet that says, what am I going to do? And he's really simplified it down. He said 50,000 more nurses, 10,000 more policemen, we're putting more money into roads and transport. They're very simple concepts. We're not spending a huge amount of money. We're not going to reduce corporation tax. So the big guys are not going to get any benefit. The little people do.
No income tax hikes, no income tax,
no VAT, and no insurance going up. So it won't affect you in your pocket, and actually your services will improve. I thought it was brilliantly done. I saw somebody commenting that it was all big pictures. I thought, yeah, welcome to the new world. It's big pictures and simple messages that people can understand. And I think I saw, a minute or 2 minutes of him in which he said, get Brexit done. It must have been 4 times. And he kept saying it with passions. What's all this about? Get Brexit
done. And as
done.
somebody who works in the world of PR, do you think that is what the electorate are now looking for? Simple, clear message, and you just say them on repeat?
Yeah. And he's saying, if you're voting for me, you know exactly what you're voting for. There's no confusion. There's no, well, if this happens, we might do that, and possibly this percentage might give us something else.
And even though others would say there was no big policy ideas, there was nothing new or interesting or inventive within it, it was almost steady as she goes, incredibly modest spending increases, if any, a complete contrast to what Labour had proposed.
Labour are spending 450 billion in their proposals, and Boris Johnson is spending less than 2 billion. I think he's absolutely Boris Johnson is saying, you elect me to get Brexit done. And I give you all these other extra bits and pieces, but it's not a massive big manifesto. It's not like you're electing somebody new. You know me. This is what I stand for. I thought he handled it brilliantly.
Get Brexit done and we will be fiscally responsible. That's who Boris Johnson is.
That's what he's saying. And even if you look at the way he handled the press conference, it was him on the podium. He had his front bench in front of him, and it was just, you're buying me. And everything about him said, I'm performing, I'm giving you this, the what's what. I thought he handled it really well.
Okay, moving on to another election, the election in the United States, which we'll all be looking forward to. We have another name in the ring for the Democratic nominee. I mean, it's been speculated about for the last couple of weeks, but it's already confirmed. Mr. Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, has thrown his hat into the ring.
Didn't he handle it differently, though? So, Michael Bloomberg, very interesting, very controversial kind of a figure. So he has been, in turn, a Republican, a Democrat, and he's now a Republican again. Former Lord Mayor of New York, that's probably how he would best be known. And of course, he's the Bloomberg. He is the Bloomberg. He's a billionaire. He's something like the 11th richest person in the world. Quite a controversial figure in terms of when he was Mayor of New York. He approved of this stop and search, a thing that they did, which basically discriminated against blacks and Latinos. Something like 4% of the people living in New York at the time were black and Latino. 47% of the people who were stopped and frisked were from that area. So the feeling is that he may not actually unite the party behind him. Fascinating that he has now come in, because he had said originally that he would run for president. Then he originally contemplated it when Hillary Clinton was running, and then backed her. Then he said he would run for president this time and decided no, Joe Biden had it in the bag. And now he has obviously decided Joe Biden doesn't have it